How does an empire die? With a great explosion? Or with that silent moment when the enormous wheels stop turning, the metal breaks from fatigue, and the steel networks that once connected continents snap? History books tell us that Rome collapsed when its roads fell into disrepair. They say the Soviet Union disintegrated when its shelves ran empty. Today, February 8, 2026. Just a few days ago, we witnessed history repeating itself across the vast geography of the Russian Federation. In our previous report, we showed you the miles-long queues of trucks waiting at border crossings, the frozen drivers, and the non-functioning engines. Some said, "You're exaggerating." Others said, "It's winter conditions, it will pass." But today, we have undeniable images proving the reason for those queues, why those engines fell silent, and how Russia's east has been cut off from the west. Look at the Kirov region, the main artery connecting Moscow to Siberia, and from there to the Pacific Ocean. The Trans-Siberian Railway was cut off a few days ago in the middle of the night. 21 wagons, tons of cargo, scattered on the snow. This is not an accident. This is the collapse of a system. When the tracks broke in Kirov, it wasn't just the trains that stopped. Siberia's food supply stopped. The flow of raw materials to the Ural factories stopped. And most importantly, Moscow's lie that everything is under control was buried under those twisted piles of metal. Today on MrWARLOG, we'll talk not just about derailed trains. We'll talk about cities running out of money, people walking to their deaths on the ice, and that massive hole in the Kremlin's coffers. Geographically, Russia may still appear to be one piece, but logistically and economically, the country has already fragmented. Welcome. It is not ideology that holds Russia together. It is not religion. It is not even Putin. The only thing holding Russia together is the railways. In this vast geography, those steel rails stretching from Vladivostok to Moscow are the backbone of the country. If the backbone breaks, the body becomes paralyzed. This is exactly what happened in the Kirov region. In images that appeared on social media and were verified by independent sources, we see 21 freight cars derailed. Official statement? None. Sabotage? Metal fatigue? Or perhaps sleepers rotting from neglect? Whatever the cause, the result remains the same. The line is severed. What were these cars carrying? Food heading from west to east? Or ammunition heading from east to west to the front? One thing we know for sure. Russian Railways, RZD, is no longer safe. Years of sanctions, technology embargoes, and a lack of trained personnel have turned the world's longest railway network into a death trap. There are no spare parts. Bearings are being replaced with low-quality Chinese knockoffs. Track maintenance is impossible due to the high volume of trains heading to the front lines. And at some point, the metal says, enough. The logistical impact of this accident in Kirov is comparable to that of an atomic bomb. Until that line reopens, the flour, sugar, and medicine cars bound for Siberia will wait. Factories will shut down, and the empty spaces on supermarket shelves will grow a little larger. Let's open a parenthesis here and look at the wheels under those overturned wagons in Kirov. MrWARLOG viewers will remember, we talked about the bearing crisis last month. Russian railways used high-strength bearings made in Sweden and the US in their wagons. When the war started, these companies withdrew. What did Russia do? It turned to China. According to intelligence reports, the Chinese-made cassette bearings, currently used in Russian wagons, cannot withstand Siberia's harsh winter conditions and excessive loading. Steel becomes brittle in the cold. If it is of poor quality, it shatters like glass. The wreckage in Kirov is not a simple accident. It is the result of the sinicization and deterioration of Russia's industrial infrastructure. Railway workers are rebelling on Telegram channels. The parts we receive are like tin. We are afraid to install them, they say. But Moscow gives the order. That train will run. The result? It doesn't run. It derails. And every derailed train is not just a pile of metal. It is also a nail in the coffin of Russia's logistical independence. We need to pause here and look at the big picture. Why are trains derailing? Because the rails are rotten. So what happens to the cargo when the trains stop? Does it evaporate? No. It goes onto the road. But there are no Russian trucks. There is currently an occupation taking place on Siberian roads. Not a military occupation, but a logistical one. After the train accident in Kirov, 40% of the cargo shifted to road transport. And 90% of the vehicles carrying this cargo are Chinese-made. Sitraks, Shackmans. Where are Russia's own legendary KAMAZ trucks? They are burning on the front lines. And KAMAZ's situation is a complete disaster. Russia's largest truck manufacturer, KAMAZ, reported a serious deterioration in its financial performance for the 2025 fiscal year. The company's net loss increased 11-fold to 37 billion rubles. Meanwhile, Siberia's roads are buckling under the weight of these oversized, overloaded trucks from China. This is the real reason behind the "road money is gone" news in Novosibirsk. Russian infrastructure was built to Soviet-era standards. It wasn't built to withstand China's 60-ton monsters. Every passing Chinese truck chips away at the asphalt a little more. Moscow opened its doors to China to solve the logistics crisis. But China did not come to rescue Russia. It came to take over its market. Right now, a driver in Siberia is calling Beijing, not Moscow, for spare parts. If a country's logistical arteries become dependent on another country's vehicles, that country is no longer independent. Russia is losing its railways and handing over its roads to China. This is not a strategic partnership. This is silent colonization. You might think, well, if the trains stop, the road network will take over. You're wrong, because the road network is also bankrupt. Let's go to Novosibirsk, the capital of Siberia and Russia's third largest city. This is not a village. This is the heart of industry, science, and logistics. However, according to Charter 97's February 4th report, the Novosibirsk City Council announced that the money allocated for road repairs has been completely exhausted. I'm not joking. The money is gone. The city's main streets resemble the surface of the moon. Trucks fall into potholes and break their axles. City officials are helpless. No budget, no repairs. So where did the money go for Russia's third largest city, one of the world's energy giants? We all know the answer. That asphalt money was spent on tanks burning in the Ukrainian steppes and missiles exploding in the air. Instead of building roads for the people of Novosibirsk, they chose to dig trenches in Donetsk. The result? Logistics companies are in revolt. Drivers don't want to use those roads. Those who do are waiting for parts in the industry. The logistics chain is breaking, not just because of snow and ice, but because of the state's bankruptcy. If a state has reached the point where it cannot even repair its main roads, then that state's map exists only on paper. Falling into a pothole in Novosibirsk will damage your car. But in Yakutia, the situation is much more dire. There, neglect kills you. The Sakha Republic, or Yakutia, the center of diamond and gold mines, Russia's treasure. But while the Kremlin exploits that treasure, it has denied the people there even a bridge. Look at the Moscow Times chilling headline from February 2nd. "The ice cracking beneath my feet." Putin has been promising for years that a bridge will be built over the Lena River. The year is 2026. There is no bridge. People have to walk across the frozen river to get to the hospital, to get food, to survive. With every step, they dance with death. The ice is thinning. Trucks are scraping the bottom of the river. People are disappearing in the cold waters. This is where Russia disconnects from civilization. While Moscow piles up air defense systems to protect the Crimean Bridge, it condemns its own citizens in Yakutia to walk on ice. This is not a logistical crisis. This is a betrayal. The center has abandoned the periphery. "Give us your gold, then drown in the river," they say. The crackling of that ice in Yakutia is actually the cracking sound of the Russian Federation. And the chain reaction continues. The train derailed. The road is gone. The bridge is gone. What's next? No heat. No water. Breaking news from the Irkutsk region. A state of emergency has been declared in the region due to insufficient water and heat. In the heart of Siberia, at -30 degrees, hundreds of thousands of people with no heaters working and no water coming out of their taps. Why? Because the boiler rooms are broken and there are no parts to repair them. Because the pipes burst and there is no budget to replace them. Because the trains carrying coal are not coming. This is the situation in which an energy superpower finds itself. They said Europe would freeze, but they themselves are freezing. The state of emergency declared in Irkutsk is actually the official name for the situation throughout Russia. The state has lost its most basic function, keeping its citizens warm. For a pensioner who freezes to death in an apartment, does it matter which village in Ukraine has been captured? What happens when logistics stop? Do only factories stop? No. Kitchens stop. Because of those trains that overturned in Kirov and those trucks that fell into a pit in Novosibirsk, a silent fire started on Russia's market shelves. The Moscow Times February 5th report names this fire. As daily prices climb, Russians feel the pain. As logistics costs rise, they are reflected on the label. In Siberia, a carton of eggs is now a luxury item. Chicken meat is worth its weight in gold. Why? Because the refrigerated trucks that transport that chicken can't find fuel, can't find spare parts, or are stuck on frozen rivers. There may still be products in Moscow's markets, but east of the Ural Mountains, food security is sounding the alarm. According to the report, people are now forced to buy products that are lower in weight and quality at double the price. They call this shrinkflation. But the Russian people call it the taste of war. When salaries remain stagnant and the price of cheese changes every week, stability in that country is over. Putin may say on television that our economy is growing. But at the checkout counter of a supermarket in Siberia, the reality slaps the propaganda in the face. Behind all this logistical and humanitarian disaster lies one simple truth. The money has run out. For years, the Kremlin has spun the fairy tale that sanctions are making us stronger. But the numbers don't lie. According to a February 6th report by the Moscow Times, Russia's budget deficit reached nearly 2 trillion rubles in just 1 month. This is a terrifying figure. It is an unsustainable hole. Why? Because, according to data released today, February 7th, by Charter 97, Russia has lost half of its oil and natural gas revenues. Revenue has halved, while war costs have tripled. Math doesn't forgive. So what is Putin doing? He is doing what economists call suicide, forcing the central bank to print money out of thin air. The printing presses are running, rubles are being printed, but those pieces of paper have no value. Even Kremlin-friendly economists admitted in their February 2nd statement that the banking crisis has begun. Banks are not lending. Companies cannot borrow. That's why there is no money for road repairs. That's why there is no money to replace train tracks. Because as soon as that money leaves the printing press, it becomes food for the inflation monster. If the state goes bankrupt, the people go bankrupt too. News from Siberia confirms that public sector workers' salaries are late. Teachers, doctors, municipal workers, they look at their accounts on payday and see zero. Personal bankruptcies are at record levels. People cannot pay their credit card debts. The cost of daily living is climbing every day. And the most painful part of this story, the state's bankruptcy brings about the individual's bankruptcy. Charter 97's data from January 31st proves how Russian society has fallen into a debt spiral. Personal bankruptcies in Russia at record levels. The figures are terrifying. Hundreds of thousands of Russian citizens are going to court saying, "I can't pay my debts, I'm bankrupt." Why? Because salaries aren't being paid. Public employees in Siberia haven't been paid for months. But the banks don't stop. Credit card interest keeps accruing. What do people do? They turn to usurious loans called microcredit. A people mortgaging their future just to buy bread, to pay their bills. This is the scenario the Kremlin feared. As Charter 97 says, what the Kremlin feared has come to pass. The social contract has been torn up. The state says to its citizens, "Give me your taxes, and I'll give you roads, water, electricity." In Russia, the state says, "Give me your son to die on the front lines. Give me your taxes to protect my palace." In return, you get no roads, no water, no salary. This equation is unsustainable. Personal bankruptcies are the fuse for social explosion. Millions of people with no money in their pockets, no heat in their homes, and empty shelves when they go to the market. This is a more dangerous force than Putin's nuclear missiles. Bloomberg's analysis sums up the situation very clearly. Putin's window of opportunity is narrowing. According to Charter 97's analysis, 2026 will be the point of instability for Russia. In other words, there is no turning back. While the people are lulled to sleep with dreams of a great Russia, they wake up to find their refrigerators empty. And hunger is more powerful than propaganda. The Kremlin's greatest fear has come true. War is no longer a show watched on television. It has become a fire in the kitchen. When you look at Russia from afar, you can still see a colossal power. But when you get closer, you see those trains derailing in Kirov. You see those trucks falling into pits in Novosibirsk. You see those people shivering on the ice in Yakutia. And you see those houses freezing in Irkutsk. This is not the image of an empire, but of a wreckage. Logistics have ground to a halt. The money has run out, and Siberia is quietly breaking away from Moscow. Those truck queues under the snow are not just vehicles carrying goods. They are the funeral procession of the Russian economy. And that procession is no longer going anywhere. Turn off the engine. We've reached the end of the road. How much longer do you think the Russian people can endure this cold and hunger? Let's meet in the comments. Stay with the truth, beyond the censorship. Subscribe to MrWARLOG. I'm Charlie. Good luck, because you'll need it.